of some people around the environment that is causing a whole lot of harm and could lead to flooding. That's going to be the focus. But quickly, let's tell you, earlier on, we did talk about a loaded tipper truck that fell on its side at Anthony, precisely by Bethula, Inwards, Maryland. The good news is that it has been taken off the road now, so it's a much better drive if you are navigating through that corridor. So take note of that as you drive through that end. We did tell you also the journey towards the island is still looking good. Ikorodu Road, also good, but approaching areas like Eko Bridge, you might have it a little bit slow within that corridor. Ejigbo corridor this morning, Old Garage, Inwards, Ikotu roundabout, a little bit busy, and while Ikotu roundabout, proceeding outwards Igondo, looking pretty good to go. Ikotu roundabout down to Ojuodu is also very good this morning. And Synagogue, Ilewe Sele, Igbe, Power Line, Iyano Ejigbo, NNPC Junction, Mubostic, Jakonde, down to Randok. All those areas looking very, very good. Now, the return journey from Randok proceeding towards NNPC Junction down to Ojuodo is also very, very good. And we can tell you we have traffic managers well positioned at strategic locations to ensure you have it good navigating through those corridors. All right, so if your experience on the road is not very friendly this morning, you can also keep us posted. Our live cameras are also giving some very, very good images here. Most of the areas that we're covering are also looking good. Talking about Yanowuru, talking about Ojota, talking about Ikeja, all looking pretty good. All right, so let's get back to the conversation on the benchmark, flood control and management, the Surveyor's blueprint. Joining me in the studios, Surveyor Agwu Roberts is Publicity Secretary, Association of Private Practicing Surveyors in Nigeria, Lagos State Branch. Agwu Roberts, back in the studios. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Victor. It's good to be back here.
All right, you're welcome. And joining him as well, Surveyor Aliu Samuel is Secretary of APPSN Lagos. Aliu Samuel, nice to have you back in the studios. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. All right, so on the program today, we'd love to hear from you, especially as it relates to the debilitating effects of those referred to as sand miners. You know them in your neighborhood. And then we'll also be reflecting a bit on the Global Surveyors Day. That will be coming up shortly. But Surveyor Agwu Roberts, we've been traveling this road of flood management and even control in the past 3 to 4 weeks. And the vision doesn't appear to be fading out. So why are we planning for the floods? Let's even start from there.
Okay, you will bear with me. You will agree with me that there's always been global warnings. There's always been warnings from the relevant government agencies, flood alerts and all that. But somehow it seems that the warnings keep coming, but our responses to these warnings have not really been encouraging. So part of what we intend to achieve with this advocacy, especially staying on this topic for this long, is to get people hearing us every now and then until it becomes, something that they give attention to.
Right.
Flooding is a disaster, but it can be averted.
All right. So things that are considered very important are said so repeatedly that even those that are hard of hearing will now begin to hear it. That's what Surveyor Agwu Roberts is talking about this morning. But talking about flooding, really, Aliu Samuel, what are the key things that we can bring to the front burner, especially at this time as we approach the rainy season?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. As we approach the rainy season, like my colleague has said, it is important we begin to enlighten ourselves, enlighten the citizens about the implications of flood. Flood can be very disastrous. It could make you lose property worth of billions of naira. It could make you lose even lives. So it is important we begin to talk about it, even though in the past it's been talked about, but let's reiterate it for our people to know that it is something that can be averted, and also so that we begin to change our attitude towards our environment. We have a lot of attitudes that are not friendly to our environment, like dumping of refuse, like sand mining, illegal sand mining, land degradation, that the effect can result into flooding. So it is important we begin to educate ourselves, and then so that we can have attitudinal change towards our environment and towards managing and averting flood.
All right. Surveyor Samuel Aliu, I know you're one of those voices on radio. A lot of times you talk about how we can correct our attitudes when you make your contributions on various programs. But let's begin to address this from a policy and government action kind of situation. So, Surveyor Agwu, do we have a flood planning department in the first place? I mean, if we look at that in the country, do we have that?
Well, I may not authoritatively say we have a department that is dedicated wholly to planning around the whole flood scenario. But I understand that we have a meteorological department that gives us warnings as regards issues.
The meteorological agency.
Yes. I also understand that the Navy also has a hydrographic unit.
Right.
I also understand that NPA, Nigerian Ports Authority, have a hydrographic unit. So, and then also Lagos State government has a
flood abatement.
Yes, and then drainage services, Office of Drainage Services.
Right.
So, but I think more needs to be done in the area of interagency cooperation and coordination, so that we don't have all this, because, you know, like they say in the local parlance, that the goats that belongs to the community will always die of hunger. So, you know, when we have so many government agencies saddled with the same responsibility and lacking in the area of interagency coordination and cooperation, we will always have the same problems that they are meant to look into reoccurring.
So if you bring Lagos as a case study, we always say Lagos is below the sea level, and once the rains begin to fall like that, sometimes we have flash floods. Sometimes those floods even go much beyond the flash points, right? So they could become so high, and what Samuel did say earlier on, attitudinal, differences could also be a major factor. But let's do some comparison, because we have some countries that are also below the sea level, and year in, year out, they might not have as much flood, as much rains as we have here, but they seem to know how to manage their water levels, especially even from the sea point. Netherlands is a specific case, if you put it in perspective. So, Surveyor Aliu Samuel, what is it that they are doing that we ain't doing?
Like I've mentioned before, from my own little research, I have discovered that one of the major things that needs to be done is attitudinal change. I'll give you an example. I was part of a team that did a project in Oyo State, but the project was about flood management, Ibadan urban flood management and mapping.
Okay.
And from that project, I was able to understand that the environs of Ibadan didn't just become flooded overnight. It was because of the attitude of people. You discover that even though government had put in place very wide canals, big canals to serve as carriage for storm water, but you find out that people had dumped refuse in those canals, in those water channels, and that results into flood. Another thing I also discover is illegal sand mining. Sand mining is not about is not on the waterways alone.
Okay.
We have sand mining within the neighborhood that is upland.
Okay, I'm going to hold you on there, because that is an issue we're going to come to. This is Lagos Traffic Radio 96.1 FM. We're looking at flood control and management, the Surveyor's perspective. Surveyor Aliu Samuel and Surveyor Agwu, both of them from the Association of Private Practicing Surveyors in Nigeria, Lagos State branch, are very much here with me. We're going to take a short break right now for the shipping position, and when we return, we'll talk about the activities of these illegal sand miners. Do you see them around your environment? You can share that with us as well, and then we can also hear from you, especially where surveyors can come in to help resolve some of these issues. These are many more I'll be reflecting on. A brief break, we'll be back.
This is Shipping Position, brought to you by Lagos Traffic Radio 96.1 FM. Thank you for staying here. 23 ships laden with petroleum products, container, general cargo, food items, and others are expected at the Lagos Ports Complex today. The Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA, made this known in its publication Shipping Position. The publication said that 20 of the ships contained bulk sugar, fish, AGO, bulk wheat, bulk base oil, PMS, bulk clinker, container, and general cargo. NPA reports that 3 motor vessels are waiting to berth with bulk sugar and container, while 1 motor tanker is waiting to berth with PMS. And that's shipping position for you. The benchmark continues after now. Just listen to Shipping Position, brought to you by Lagos Traffic Radio 96.1 FM.
Lagos Traffic Radio 96.1 FM, the benchmark. And of course, you know what it is. This is the recipe for best practices in surveying. But my guests this morning are giving us some tips on how we can avert flooding in the year 2024. And that's why we're looking at flood control and flood management, the surveyor's perspective. Surveyor Aliu Samuel is here, as well as Surveyor Agwu Roberts, both of them from the Lagos State branch of APPSN, Association of Private Practicing Surveyors in Nigeria. Traffic is still looking very, very good. But we did tell you that that fallen tipper earlier on, which fell around Betola, has been recovered. And so it's a much better drive if you're navigating through that corridor. Ikorodu Road as well is still receiving with a good vehicular flow. So let's get to that thought flow that you were just drifting on earlier on, Surveyor Aliu Samuel. You're talking about what you did in Ibadan and some of the things that you found out. One of them, people clogging the canals with waste, and then you talk about the illegal sand miners. Just expatiate on that for us.
No, what I was talking about the illegal miners is, for instance, where I live in Ikorodu, there's a portion along Ibeshe Road. That area is supposed to be, it's just beside the Ikorodu GRA. That place is supposed to be an upland, but over time it has become an artificial lake. No thanks to illegal sand miners. They just went there and then cut away the earth on that place.
Wow. And
then you will see that a land of about 3 hectares has become an artificial lake. You understand? And that place, it's just there. It's no longer useful for anybody, except maybe one institution that is rich enough that will be able to sand fill it back would buy the place. So you understand? So it has degraded that parcel of land. It has even degraded the access to the adjoining parcel of land that is there. So those are the effects of illegal sand mining.
And we have that around. Do we have these illegal sand miners all over Lagos?
They're all over everywhere. They are everywhere. In fact, I know in my place where I stay in Ikorodu, there are a lot of illegal sand miners there. You see them taking laterite. You see a heap of mountain that will just be reduced overnight to a lowland, and then they will gradually reduce such places into a flood plain. And because the moment you take away the earth that is on the surface, you understand, you are making that place vulnerable to become a lowland. And once it rains, water will log there.
All right, so Surveyor Agwu Roberts, I needed to expatiate on that because the connection between the activities of these sand miners and flooding, which Surveyor Aliu Samuel just touched on, how crucial is that? How serious is that a problem for us in Lagos?
Well, it's a very big problem, considering that we're already battling with being naturally below the sea level at major parts of the state. And then we now have people who are further contributing to taking us, below that level and then creating artificial collection points for water. We're still battling with what we already have naturally, and then people are creating more collection points that are not even coordinated, because these collection points are not coordinated, So I think government needs to step up in the area of control, in the area of regulation, in the area of clamping down on these illegal sand miners. It's not enough to, see sand mining regulation as a revenue generation opportunity. Okay. But we should look beyond the revenue and see, because it doesn't make sense you're generating revenue from these sand miners, and then you're plunging in more funds to mitigate the disaster that they are already causing.
Right. So that is
yes.
one council one.
Yes.
So you're not moving in the sense of advancement, so to say. All right. So is there any difference between a flood management plan and, of course, a flood mitigation project? Is there any difference?
Yeah, they are connected, but there's a little difference between them.
Okay.
A flood mitigation plan is like an action you're taking when the flood had already happened, or when the flood is on already. While a flood plan is something you're preparing to avert it, for it not to happen in the future, or perhaps when it happens, ways to go about it so that they won't the level of destruction or damage will be minimal.
All right, I just ways we can connect all of this, because I know in the past 3 weeks you've talked about some of the solutions, constant clearing of the drainage channels and all of that. But if you have a situation whereby your drainages are open, or perhaps some of those connectors are open, is that not a recipe for people to dump their waste illegally? Is there a way you can control that?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to even look at is the area of having this attitudinal change, you know, because having covered drains all over the place is also a problem on its own, because if what happens when the drains get clogged up, the process of cleaning up is more tedious. You may not even be able to identify where the blockage has happened when you have covered drains all over the place. But I think we need to do more with having a change in our attitude.
Right.
You know, you don't just see an open drain and then because it's raining. Because if you notice in Lagos, people dispose their waste when it's raining.
So I'd like you to give us a comparison. I mean, those countries that we're talking about, controlling their own flooding and doing that, do they have open drains?
Yes, they have open drains. They have open drains, but you don't see people dump refuse in the drains. So it boils down to having the right attitude.
Okay. Attitudinal change, and that is what we've been campaigning for years on this frequency. I know we've talked about Loma and what you're doing. We've been talking about indiscriminate dumping of waste in the drainages, in the canals, but that doesn't seem to change. So what do we need to do next? Because as we speak right now, we see some people who are channeling their wastewater directly into those drainages. We have an office for wastewater management. Dave said that's not the proper thing to do, but we still find that on a daily basis. So is there anything else that we can do to control that? Samuel?
Yes, one of the things I've advocated with regards to most government policies is enforcement. You know, everywhere in the world, human beings are likely to break laws, and if you look at it from creation, God created man. The likelihood of man disobeying has always been there, and said he decided to enforce. You understand? So I think that government needs to step up its enforcement drive. When people know that there is punishment for certain action, and that punishment is consistent, you understand, over time, not 1 week enforcement and then you go back to sleep, and after 6 months again you come back to do the enforcement, because that is what I have noticed with most government enforcement drives. You know, so that enforcement needs to be consistent over a period of time for people to be able to have that attitudinal change. But if you enforce for a short period of time and you go back to sleep again for about 6 months, people will just look at you like a joker. Say, they go soon tire. After maybe 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, they will stop. You understand? I give you an example. Example is that of crossing the expressway where there's a pedestrian bridge. You understand? I have also advocated that on this platform. You see that people will come, enforce for about 1 week, and then they will go back. There will be no enforcement again for the next maybe 6 months. You understand?
Right.
So leaving the people to also believe that government is just joking, because that enforcement is not consistent. The same thing goes to the topic we are talking about with regards to flooding. You understand?
Right.
There are a lot of regulations that government has put in place for enforcement in terms of drainage construction, in terms of channeling your wastewater. But it has to be backed up with enforcement. If you don't back it up with adequate and consistent enforcement, people will just see you as jokers.
Lagos Traffic Radio 96.1 FM, the benchmark. And today we're talking flood control and management. And we're looking at it from the perspective of surveyors. You want to add your voice to the conversation this morning, feel free. You can do that on 091 5387 7127. That's 091 5387 7127. And you can also send your messages on WhatsApp, which is on 08099120777. Okay, those are the lines that you can use to connect with us. But we're talking about sand miners, the illegal sand miners. Have you seen them in your neighborhood? What effect are they really having on your own environment? And what do you think we can do to curtail their excesses? And then for the those that are bringing out their waste, blocking your drainage channels, causing a whole lot of flooding headaches, so to say, how do you think we can handle them? What are the things that we need to do at this time to ensure that we curtail their excesses? That's the areas I will need you to also join the conversation this morning. All right. I understand that next week is going to be the Global Surveyors Day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What date is that?
21st of March.
21st of March?
Yes.
All right. How are we going to be celebrating that?
Well, Global Surveyors Day is a day set aside to recognize the contribution of surveyors all over the world, the contribution of surveyors in shaping, in managing our environment. It was set aside, I think the first Global Surveyors Day was held in 2018 in the United States during a conference of a gathering of surveyors in the United States in Washington. And since then it's been observed, and we've also been observing it in Nigeria too, particularly here in Lagos State.
Okay.
The association is also going to be observing that of next week, which is on Thursday, to observe that day. And there are a lot of focuses that we are going to be looking at on that day.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to be talking a whole lot on surveying and what you guys do. Are you going to be reflecting on your activities and your functions to the society?
That's correct. Like this year's zone, the theme for this year's zone is marking out resilient communities and the wealth of the nation. And the activities that are going to go side by side with that theme will involve a road walk, TV shows and radio talk shows, career talks in schools with organizations, community walks including road rehabilitation, clearing of drainages, repair of community facilities, visits to some care institutions like hospitals, motherless babies' homes.
Okay.
And also holding some lectures and seminars.
Okay, those are part of the things that you guys have lined up for this year's celebration.
Yes.
That will be is that on Thursday now?
Thursday, yes, 21st of March, Thursday.
All right.
Yes.
All right, there's a message here. It says, good morning, Victor. I find this topic very interesting. Thanks for bringing in the surveyors on the program. I have a question to ask. It says, from your perspective as a surveyor, what are the key vulnerabilities contributing to the community's sustainability to flooding in an area like Egbeda, which is usually heavily flooded when it rains? Okay. Chinedu is sending this one in. Chinedu from Yabatek. So what are those things that could make a place like Egbeda get flooded? In fact, that's a very, very good case study. Anytime it rains, you find out that a place like Egbeda is always flooded. I don't know if you guys have, traversed those areas.
Yes, we have. Places like Egbeda, you would notice that there are, the drainages around such areas, some of those drainages have been clogged. Some of them are not designed to withstand the volume of rainfall or the volume of water in that environment. You have maybe a drainage that is designed, that is supposed to be, say, 1.2 meters wide and say maybe about 1.2 meters deep is having about maybe 700 mm wide,
Okay.
and maybe even less deep. So for a situation like that, you have underutilized that space, that environment. If you have created a drainage that is supposed to take certain volume of water, and you have not made adequate use of that space, then you will definitely have flooding.
So there's no way one can escape that in a place like Egbeda, for instance. So the drainages are too small to accommodate the volume of rainfall that we have right now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 09153 877-127. Those are the numbers to call. Let's have your own input as well. What do you think we can do really to probably stop this menace of indiscriminate dumping that we usually record on a regular basis? What are your suggestions? Okay. Are there more punitive measures that can be done? Because even as we speak right now, I know that Loma has been carrying out some kind of enforcement as well. They've been doing what they call some kind of punishment in a community, for them to sweep and clean the environment. But is that sufficient for us to, to serve as a deterrent to others? What do you think can also be added to make it much better in that regard? All right, so from the perspective of surveyors, Surveyor Agwu robot, what are the major things? How can surveyors come in to help out in flood management?
Okay, basically, one of the things we're doing here is creating awareness, carrying out advocacy, but also surveyors are key consultants when it comes to flood management and control. Now, how are they key consultants? One, flooding basically affects the surface of the earth, and surveyors are experts when it comes to managing terrains, when it comes to understanding the terrain and understanding how the terrain relates with whatever activities happens on it. Now, talking about terrain, I mean the earth surface.
All right.
Now, that's our turf. So I think surveyors need to be engaged more. The government needs to engage surveyors more. Private developers need to engage surveyors more.
Let's take this call. Hello there. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Aliu on the line. Mr. Victor, how are you?
Very good. Elelubo, how are you doing?
It's a pleasure. Fine, well done.
Very
Thank
good.
God you brought the surveyors online.
Right.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Addressing the issue of flooding, it is about, let me say, tripartite thing. The
Okay.
government, the practitioners, surveyors, and the people. Everybody need to put their hands on deck and begin to work towards how we can solve this problem. One, when surveyors are engaged to assist in solving, they should be able to tell well enough if an area is prone to flooding, if it's a waterway, then you appropriately advise your client not to erect structures in this place. That's one, on the part of those who are engaged
Okay.
to work for people. Now, on the part of the people, we all need to have a change of attitude, and that is what traffic radio has been talking about for ages. We all need to have a change of attitude. If you come to my area, Mushi, you see people dumping refuse along the road media. And whenever it rains, what do you see? All these things go back into the drain, blocking the drain, and then you have floods. Now, on the part of the government here in Mission has not been proactive enough. There is this lackadaisical attitude. You don't arrest them. You leave them. You are not punishing them. You are not doing anything, especially those roads, those houses that are along the road. Once it rains, even when it did not rain, they find it difficult to dispose of their refuse properly. Only want to come and put it on the road so that they'll have free Loma services.
All right.
So the government needs to come in and really deal with such people. Those houses along the road that constitute, or once they begin to seal them up, then you begin to see a change. Now, as for us citizens, we all need to have a change of attitude. Somebody going inside his car after eating, he threw something out of the windscreen and things like that. So, like I told you earlier on, it is a tripartite thing. The government are involved, the engineers are part of it, then the citizens. I just pray God to help Nigeria.
Thank you.
Good day, my brother.
Good day, Elelubo. Thank you so much. And it's been a long time. Thank you for bringing your voice back on radio. It's a long time we heard from you as well. Okay, so he's giving us some kind of recipe on what we can do to address the issue of flooding. And he says surveyors can also do their part as well. Agwu Robots, did you share his sentiments?
Yes, I do share his sentiments. Surveyors, over time, whenever we have been opportuned to render services, have not failed to advise. But the challenge is most times you advise and the person tells you it's not necessary. For instance, somebody contracts you to do a survey for him, maybe over a large expanse of land, and you as a professional recommend a particular service that would advise the civil engineers and architects in the kind of design to put up for that person. And then the person tells you, no, it's not my business, leave that one, just do what I've asked you to do. You know. And what is that? Probably you recommended a detailed topographical survey that will give the architects and the engineers an insight of what is happening on that terrain, so that it will also inform their designs. But the individual refuses because he feels it's not necessary. So I think it's one for the surveyors to recommend. It's another thing for the people to trust the advice of the surveyor. But there's also the part of government to begin to enforce certain things or certain elements as part of certain requirements as part of planning and planning approvals. Before you get planning approval for certain kinds of developments, they must insist on you having a topographical survey duly signed and prepared by a registered surveyor.
All right, that's a message here. It says, good morning, Victor. Dumping of refuse into the drainage channel is a menace that must be dealt with truly because it's contributing to flooding in my area, Igondo. He said, owing to the activities of the market women around there. He says there was a case of a woman offloading sacks of corn pods into the gutter out there in the rain. He says, I think community engagement is not enough. I will suggest stricter measures be implemented. Thank you. This is Ola from Abule Egba. All right, so you have that kind of situation. How do we now get this kind of people plugged in, those women that are always doing this? Once it rains, it's time to bring out all the waste and dump in the canal. Is that something we can do as a community enforcement?
Okay, yes, there's a lot we can do. One, we need to have our community leaders. Government will need to engage more with community leaders, with CDAs, leaders of markets, various markets, and development associations. Because, for instance, there was a day I was driving, and then there was a car in front of me. He finished drinking, taking a drink, and then he threw the bottle through the window. There was a truck driver behind who stopped his car, dropped from the truck, came and picked the bottle and knocked on the man's window and told him, take your bottle. And the man got offended, you know. Yes, so I think it's something that everybody should get involved in. We need to keep on preaching this thing until people start adjusting. Right. As for that market woman, I think if there was a synergy between the government agencies and leaders of markets, that woman could easily be reported, and then the market leader takes appropriate action to discipline her.
But also, I think as well, for the people in that community, you see people doing those kind of things, we throw a blind eye to it. Maybe if you have gone to accost her, Ola, if you listen to me right now, if you had gone to accost her while she was doing that, maybe there could also be a change of heart next time, you know. But let's begin to take this home now because of time. Surveyor Aliu Samuel, what do we need to do jointly at this time to avoid flooding? What are some of the things quickly?
First of all, like we've mentioned, attitudinal change. And then we also jointly need to continue to tell each other the effects and the dangers that abound in flooding, you know, and what it could cost us. It could cost us as much as even lives, right, you know, when there's flooding. So we need to also step up the advocacy. The advocacy should not be coming from surveyors alone. I mean, everybody is involved. It's about our environment. So we all need to be involved, government and everybody.
All right. Okay, then. And Agwu Robots, your message?
Yes, just like Surveyor Aliu rightly said, it involves every one of us. Lives are involved, property involved, time, resources, and all that. So the environment must be protected. or else when the environment fights back, we will not be able to resist it.
All right, that's a very powerful message indeed. Once the environment begins to fight back, it might be very, very devastating, and that's why we all need to pay attention. So collectively, you can talk to that woman in your neighborhood, that man who is coming out to pee or perhaps throw waste in the drainage channels right in front of your street. Please ensure that they desist from doing that so that we can save the environment from degradation. We have to go. The program has been produced by Mike James. I say a big thank you to Okpeyemi Shudunke, and our executive producer is Tayo Akonle. You can always connect, and you want to know that surveyor who is real or perhaps who is fake, go online and check it out. They have a list of certified professionals that are in the surveying profession and be able to get the right deal. All right, then, next week, Friday, the benchmark makes a return. But till then, this is Victor Oteri. Have a great day.